Unaware his wife owned the company, hosting their family gala, husband refused her a seat at the table and laughed with his mother and mistress. What she announced on stage ruined them. He didn't just ignore her. In a ballroom filled with gold lights and expensive perfume, he looked straight at his wife in front of his family and friends and personally refused her a seat at his table. That night, Clara Hayes stood near the main table of her husband's family gala, dressed simply but with eyes full of quiet love. Her husband, Daniel, adjusted his suit while his mother, Ruth, smiled tightly and said to the event planner, "We only need one chair beside him tonight." The planner hesitated, glancing at Clara as if to confirm. For a second, the whole table held its breath. Then Daniel looked at the empty chair, at his wife, and made the choice that would destroy him. "Remove that chair," he said clearly. "My guest will sit next to me. Clara can find another place, or stand with the staff." As the chair meant for Clara was dragged away, a woman in a red gown, Marissa, slid her hand onto Daniel's arm and kissed his cheek, laughing softly. The mistress. Cameras caught their smiles. Hotel security, who still had her photo on file from last year, greeted them like a glamorous couple. And Clara? She was left standing beside the table she once thought was hers. He thought she was just a plain wife with no power. Ruth thought she was lucky just to be tolerated. The mistress thought she could take her place without a fight. None of them knew the truth, because the company hosting the entire gala, Hayes Events Management, the event, the staff, the contracts, the money, belonged to the woman they were mocking. While he laughed at her in public and spent her company's funds on his affair, her name sat quietly at the bottom of every contract, hidden behind her maiden name. And later that same night, under those same chandeliers, Clara would step onto the stage, take the microphone, and say words that would tear his reputation apart, end his role in her company, and shatter his marriage in front of everyone. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Clara be pushed to the back of the room again. When you click that button, you stand with every underestimated woman and every quiet soul planning their comeback. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The morning began with a sharp intensity that didn't belong in such a quiet house. A phone alarm blared from across the room, vibrating against a wooden desk stacked with documents. Clara Hayes, 34 years old, calm-eyed, warm-hearted, opened her eyes fast, as if waking from a decision rather than a dream. Her breath was steady but heavy, the kind that carries years of silent effort no one ever noticed. She sat up slowly, her gaze drawn instantly toward the far wall of her home office. The shelves there glowed in the soft morning light. Dozens of framed awards, leadership plaques, innovation recognitions, business growth honors, lined the space from end to end. Every plaque carried the same name, Clara Hayes, her maiden name, the name she built her world on. In the outside world, she was Mrs. Clara Thompson on invitations and family documents. But at work, in every contract and corporate record, she stayed Clara Hayes. Daniel knew she used Hayes at work, but he never cared enough to ask why she protected that name so fiercely. He just assumed it was a branding thing and never pressed further. Clara stepped into the room, and the intensity dissolved into softer reflection. She brushed her fingers over one frame, then another. This office wasn't just a workspace. It was a private museum of her father's legacy. Her father, James Hayes, had started a small consulting company from nothing when she was a child. She remembered sitting by his feet while he studied business reports late into the night. He used to tell her, "If you work with honesty and heart, success will come. But don't chase applause, chase excellence." When Clara was only 25, cancer took him from her. The memory still hit her like a sudden wind. Her father calling her to his bedside, his voice faint but steady. "Clara," he whispered, "protect the company, grow it, but grow yourself too. Don't let anyone dim your worth." She promised him she would, and she did. Clara inherited Hayes Consulting Group, a company small enough to run from a modest office. But with her sharp mind and calm determination, she expanded it into a quiet powerhouse. She took her father's advice and kept her success private. She never chased the spotlight. She loved working silently, letting her results speak for her. To keep peace at home, she made one firm rule with her core team: her husband and his family must never be treated like they were dependent on her. No special favors. No, this is the owner's husband. She didn't want Daniel to feel small until the day she met Daniel. Daniel Thompson, 36, charming smile, confident stride, loved being the center of attention. He loved applause, compliments, leadership roles, fancy events. From their very first dates, he talked endlessly about wanting to be a man people looked up to. Clara admired his passion, and with her gentle heart, she believed love meant support, so she never told him that she owned a thriving company. She wanted him to shine. She didn't want to bruise his pride, but something else whispered inside her. If he knew, would he treat me differently? She never wanted the answer, not back then. Clara moved to her desk and opened her laptop. Her calendar was full, as always, but there was one event that stood out: the Thompson family gala. Daniel, his mother, and his relatives held this annual event to celebrate their business connections. What Daniel didn't know was that the company hosting the event, Hayes Events Management, was one of Clara's own quietly owned subsidiaries, acquired during a strategic expansion 4 years earlier. She never used her own face in marketing. The brand was known. The owner was not. Public documents showed Hayes Consulting Group as the parent company, but Daniel had never connected the dots between the Hayes on the contracts and the Hayes on his wife's office wall. This year's gala was important. Daniel had rehearsed speeches for weeks. He wanted this night to be his moment. And even though Clara felt a small ache at the idea of being pushed aside once again, she still wanted him to feel proud. Her phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up. It was Evelyn, the assistant manager of her event company. Evelyn was in her 40s, loyal, professional, and one of the few who knew Clara's true identity as the owner. "Ma'am," she asked, "should we prepare your seat at the main table for tonight's gala? We can list you under your married name so no one suspects." Clara smiled faintly, though her eyes dimmed. "No, Evelyn," she answered gently. "He wants to shine tonight. Let him have it. Keep everything as planned." Her voice was warm, but something about the sentence carried a quiet sadness, one even she didn't fully understand yet. Evelyn paused on the other end, sensing it. "As you wish, ma'am. If you need anything, I'm here. My team and I will stay discreet like always." Clara hung up and leaned back in her chair. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. She opened a drawer and took out a printed gala program. She read every line carefully, her breath caught. At the bottom of the page, printed in small, elegant letters, was the official logo: Hayes Events Management, her company, bearing her father's legacy. She pressed her fingers against the logo, tracing its edges. Daniel had no idea he was standing on a stage she built. No idea that his big night existed because of her father's teachings. No idea that the wife he often ignored was the reason his event even existed. And as Clara stared at that logo, her phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. A single message appeared. "Are you ready for tonight?" Her heart froze. She frowned slightly. Only a small circle of people had her current number: her staff, a few close friends, Daniel, and some vendors. Daniel insisted she share it with, for coordination and emergencies. She didn't recognize this one. Clara's car had barely stopped in front of the Thompson family home before the front door flew open. Ruth Thompson, Daniel's mother, 61 years old, sharp eyes, even sharper tongue, stood on the doorstep with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wasn't welcoming. She wasn't smiling. She looked as if Clara had shown up uninvited. All the way there, Clara had glanced at her phone more than once, rereading the unknown message. "Are you ready for tonight?" She had checked Daniel's number, her staff, her friends. None matched the new contact. She didn't reply. She told herself it was probably some vendor or mistaken number, but the unease stayed. "About time," Ruth snapped before Clara could even step out of the car. "We have work to do. The gala isn't going to organize itself." Her tone carried the same familiar sting Clara had learned to endure for 7 long years. The intensity of Ruth's hostility hit hard, but Clara swallowed it the way she always did. She stepped out of the car slowly, smoothing her coat, trying not to let the harsh greeting ruin her composure. Her breath trembled for only a second. Then the moment softened as Clara's thoughts shifted inward, slipping into reflection. She remembered the first day she met Ruth. Daniel had been so excited. He had told his mother that Clara was the one. Clara had worn her nicest dress and baked a small cake, hoping to make a good impression. Ruth didn't even taste it. She only asked Clara one question. "What does your family bring to my son's future?" Clara didn't understand the meaning then. She understood it now. Ruth wanted Daniel to marry someone from a wealthy political family, someone who could raise his status. Instead, he married Clara, quiet, gentle, private Clara, who never boasted about her work or shared her achievements. Ruth assumed that meant Clara had nothing to offer. Ruth never knew the truth, that Clara owned more than she could ever imagine, and Clara never corrected her. Clara followed Ruth into the house. Daniel was inside, standing near the dining table, checking a list. 36 years old, charming to everyone except the woman he should have protected most. Daniel looked up briefly at Clara. No smile, no warmth. Just a nod before he returned to his list. His coldness pressed against her heart, a weight she had grown used to carrying. Ruth waved her hand toward table decorations. "Clara, make yourself useful and arrange these." In the next room, Clara heard voices, Ruth's friends, older women who adored gossiping. Clara tried to focus on placing the decorations neatly, but the voices flowed clearly through the doorway. One woman whispered, "She's so quiet." Another said, "Quiet? More like invisible." And then Ruth replied, not even lowering her voice, "She should be grateful my son tolerates her." The words landed like a slap across Clara's chest. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't cry, but her hand tightened around a glass vase until her knuckles turned white. Daniel heard it. He was only a few feet away. He looked directly at his mother, then at Clara, and he said nothing. No correction, no defense, not even a gentle gesture toward his wife. Clara lowered her eyes, hiding the hurt, but inside something quiet cracked. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of crack that happens right before something breaks for good. She forced a small smile and kept arranging the decorations. Ruth walked past her again and muttered, "At least pretend you know what you're doing." Clara didn't respond. Her voice would have betrayed her. She moved away from the table and stepped into the hallway, needing a breath of air. She reached into her pocket for her phone, just to give her hand something to do. The screen lit up instantly with a new message from the same unknown number. This time it said, "Are you coming to the gala alone?" Clara froze. Her heart didn't race. No. It dropped, deep and heavy, like someone had pushed it off a cliff. She looked up slowly, sensing she was being watched, even though the hallway was empty. The house around her buzzed with gala preparations, voices, footsteps, laughter. But the message on the screen was louder than all of it. She wasn't ready to see the truth behind it. Not yet. But something inside her whispered. This wasn't just a message, it was a warning. And upstairs, through the open staircase railing, a soft sound echoed, someone laughing quietly with a voice she didn't recognize. The scene burst open with tense energy, sharp and suffocating. Following that unfamiliar laugh upstairs, Clara stepped into the master bedroom and stopped, stunned by what she saw. Daniel stood in front of the tall mirror, straightening his tie again and again, like a man under pressure. His hands shook slightly. His breath was tight. He kept repeating the same lines of his speech. "Good evening. I'm honored to welcome you all." He said it too loudly, too fast, the words running over each other. This wasn't confidence. This wasn't excitement. This was fear. The intensity of his emotions pulled her into the room like a magnet. She shut the door quietly behind her. Then the scene softened, shifting into a heavy reflection as she watched him. Once upon a time, Daniel used to rehearse speeches while holding her hand. He used to ask her to stand beside him, saying she made him feel braver, stronger. He used to smile at her with pride, but now his eyes refused to meet hers, and his shoulders tightened whenever she walked near. Clara stepped closer, not wanting to startle him. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. Daniel didn't answer. He only kept fixing the same tie knot. The room felt colder. Clara looked around for something to help distract her from the strange pressure. She walked toward his dresser to check if the cufflinks were still there. She pulled open one drawer and froze. Inside were 2 gala invitations. One was addressed the way she expected, Daniel Thompson. But the second one made her blood run cold. Daniel Thompson plus guest. Not Daniel Thompson plus Clara Thompson. Not even her name in the corner. Just guest. A guest he obviously planned to bring. A guest he didn't want anyone questioning. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. She didn't speak. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she placed the invitation back in its exact spot, careful not to leave a trace. She knew from experience that if she accused him without proof, he would twist her words into jealousy or overthinking. Behind her, Daniel finally spoke, still staring at his reflection. Everything has to be perfect tonight. His voice was firm but carried a strange, nervous edge. Clara forced a quiet breath. Perfect for who? Daniel didn't answer. He only tightened his jaw and fixed his posture. Clara stepped closer to him, searching his face. That was when his phone, lying on the nightstand, lit up with a soft vibration. She couldn't help but glance at the screen. A new message appeared, a heart emoji followed by the initial M. The message preview showed, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Clara's stomach nodded. She didn't react outwardly, but inside something twisted sharply. She knew enough about relationships to recognize emotional betrayal long before physical betrayal. Daniel snatched the phone so quickly his cufflink scraped the table. Without thinking, he flipped it face down and stepped away from it. That single action confirmed everything she feared. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, quiet, unseen, fading slowly from her own marriage. To steady herself, she let her mind fall into a flashback. She remembered a night 3 years earlier when Daniel had begged her to stand next to him at a business dinner. She remembered him whispering, "Just seeing you calms me." She remembered how proud he once was to call her his wife. The memory felt like it belonged to a different lifetime, one she wasn't sure had been real. When the flashback faded, the room returned to its cold silence. Clara watched Daniel put on his suit jacket. He didn't look at her. He didn't thank her. He didn't include her. He only said, "Make sure you're dressed properly. My family will be watching." Clara swallowed her hurt. Her voice was soft when she finally asked, "Daniel, is there something I should know about tonight?" Her question cut through the air like a blade. His head jerked slightly, just enough to show he heard the fear in her voice. But he didn't turn. He didn't pause. He didn't think. He answered immediately, too fast. "Just don't embarrass me." The words were sharp, almost rehearsed, as if he'd already said them to someone else, as if he was expecting her to ruin something she didn't even understand. The sting traveled through her chest like a piercing ache. She held her breath, forcing herself not to show any pain. Daniel grabbed his jacket and walked past her without looking back. The door shut behind him. Clara stood alone in the room, wrapped in cold silence, her eyes drifting back toward the invitation drawer, toward the evidence she wasn't supposed to find. She adjusted the drawer slightly, making it look untouched. And as she turned to leave, her phone vibrated again. It was from the same unknown number as before. "Hope you're dressed nicely. I'll be near Daniel tonight." Her breath froze. The scene opened with fierce intensity the moment Clara stepped out of the car. Flashing lights burst across her vision as photographers swarmed the sidewalk. Voices shouted Daniel's name from every direction. "Daniel! This way! Mr. Thompson, look here! Smile for us!" But not one camera turned to Clara. Daniel moved forward quickly, almost rushing. Not waiting, not looking back. He lifted his hand in a confident wave, soaking in the attention like a man who believed the night belonged to him. Clara stood at the edge of the red carpet, the noise hitting her like a physical force. The excitement, the lights, the cheers, it all wrapped around Daniel, and she was left standing behind, invisible. The intensity only grew when security approached. 2 guards stepped in front of Daniel, greeting him with friendly nods. Their badges bore the logo of the hotel, not Hayes Events. They'd been hired by the venue, briefed from a checklist, not by Clara's internal security head, Marco. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson. Welcome back," the taller guard said. He extended a hand to guide Daniel forward. Clara smiled politely, expecting at least a nod of recognition as the woman walking beside Daniel. But the guards didn't even glance at her. She took a small step forward, and one of them lifted a hand to stop her. "Sorry, ma'am, this area is restricted." Clara blinked. "Restricted?" I'm with him. The guard checked his tablet and frowned. We were told Mr. Thompson's wife wouldn't be attending tonight. Her heart dropped. Logic connected painfully. Daniel told them she wasn't coming? Why? The second guard added, still looking at the tablet instead of her face. Last year he brought a different guest. We have her photo on file to confirm entry. A cold wave washed over Clara. Last year, he brought someone else? Someone security recognized enough to keep on record? Her throat tightened, but she steadied herself and forced calm into her voice. I am his wife. The guards looked uncomfortable, glancing at each other. They weren't part of her trusted staff. They had never met her in person. She rarely attended events, and when she did, she stayed away from cameras. All they had was their briefing. Ma'am, if you could wait. Daniel finally turned around, irritation flashing in his eyes. It's fine, he said sharply. She's with me. His tone was flat, annoyed, like she was an inconvenience he hadn't planned for. The guards stepped aside. The intensity broke. The noise faded slightly as they walked down the red carpet. But inside Clara, everything slowed into reflection. Slow, soft, painful. She remembered every moment she used to walk beside him proudly. Every time he told her, I want everyone to know you're mine. Every time he held her hand tightly in public events. Those memories felt distant now, fading like old photographs left in sunlight. When they entered the ballroom, the ceiling glittered with glass chandeliers. Music floated softly through the air. Guests dressed in bright gowns and dark suits laughed, hugged, toasted glasses. It was a beautiful night, one she should have enjoyed. But beauty meant nothing when humiliation followed close behind. Ruth Thompson, Daniel's mother, appeared near the main table, holding a clipboard and supervising a team of planners. She spotted Clara and frowned immediately. Oh, good, you're finally here, Ruth said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. Clara tried to smile politely. Do I sit? Ruth cut her off. We'll see where you fit. Beside Ruth stood Karen, the event planner, a thin woman in her late 30s dressed in black. Karen worked for Hayes Events and knew exactly who Clara really was, but also knew Clara's strict rule. Never treat me differently in front of my husband's family. Ruth pointed at the chair placed beside Daniel's. This setup still has 2 seats by him? She asked Karen sharply. Karen hesitated. Yes, ma'am. One for Mr. Thompson and one for his... Daniel checked the table, then glanced at Clara, then at the empty chair. Something hard flickered in his eyes. A choice. Karen, he said, his voice clear and firm. Remove that chair. Karen froze. Sir, that seat was... For my guest, Daniel cut in, not looking at Clara. My guest sits beside me tonight. Clara can sit somewhere else, or stand with the staff. The words hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. Ruth's lips curled into a pleased smile. You heard my son, she added. Remove it. Karen swallowed nervously and lifted the chair away, her movements careful, apologetic. She shot Clara a tiny pained glance, as if to say, I'm sorry, but she couldn't break Clara's privacy rule without her permission. Clara stood there, silent, frozen. She felt the eyes of guests turning toward her, the whispered comments, the curious glances, the subtle pity. Daniel didn't turn around, didn't correct himself, didn't say, she's my wife, leave the seat. He adjusted his cufflinks instead, as if nothing important had just happened. Clara lowered her eyes, hiding the hurt scorching inside her. Her reflection deepened, the realization sinking in. Daniel had prepared the night without her, planned a seat for someone else, told security she wouldn't come, even brought another woman last year. The pieces were fitting together in a painful, perfect line. She forced herself to breathe slowly, deeply, trying not to fall apart. Then it happened. A soft breeze brushed the back of her neck. A new scent drifted through the air, sweet, bold perfume, the kind worn by a woman who entered rooms expecting attention. Clara felt a presence behind her. Before she could turn, a hand, manicured, delicate, confident, slid smoothly onto Daniel's arm. Daniel stiffened, then relaxed, like this touch was familiar. Clara's vision blurred for a moment. She turned her head slowly. And there she was, the mistress, the face behind the unknown messages, The woman from last year's gala, the one whose photo the guards had on file, the woman Daniel had just removed his wife's chair for. The scene exploded with brutal intensity the moment the mistress stepped forward. Everyone in the ballroom turned to look. She was stunning, tall, elegant, dressed in a shimmering red gown that demanded attention. Her name was Marissa Lane, a 32-year-old event coordinator known in social circles for her charm and bold personality. She sometimes worked with high-end clients, which was how she had first crossed paths with Daniel, and how she had justified having Clara's number saved under a neutral label. She wasn't shy. She wasn't quiet. She wasn't unsure of her place, and she walked straight to Daniel as if she belonged to him. With a confident smile, she leaned in and kissed Daniel's cheek. Not a hesitant kiss. Not a polite greeting. A kiss of possession. Photographers at the edges of the room lifted their cameras. The flash popped. Guests whispered. Daniel didn't pull away. He didn't look surprised. He didn't even look guilty. He simply smiled. Clara stood only a few steps behind him, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear the music. The intensity of the moment made her feel suddenly unsteady, as if the ground under her feet had become thin and weak. This is it, she thought. This is the truth I didn't want to face. Then the chaos slowed into deep, painful reflection. Clara had always heard whispers, small rumors, hints from friends, little signs she convinced herself meant nothing. But rumors don't destroy you, not the way this did. Her thoughts slid into a quiet inner voice. I had heard rumors before, but rumors don't crush you. Laughter does. Her chest tightened so hard she struggled to breathe. She watched Marissa rest her hand comfortably on Daniel's arm, the same way Clara used to. Daniel's eyes shined with the same attention he once gave his wife. But now, that look belonged to someone else. Clara took a small step forward, forcing herself to stay composed. She had to ask where she should sit. She needed direction, something, anything, to keep her from breaking apart in front of everyone. Daniel, she said gently, where? Before she could finish the sentence, Ruth, Daniel's mother, leaned forward from her seat at the table. Her voice was loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Oh, look, Ruth said, pretending to smile kindly. She wants to know where to sit. Several heads turned. Ruth continued, maybe she can stand with the staff. A few guests gasped, shocked at the cruelty. Marissa covered her mouth with a delicate hand and laughed, a bold, unapologetic laugh that echoed through the table. Daniel looked at Marissa, and he laughed too. Not a nervous laugh, not a confused one, a laugh of agreement. The humiliation wrapped around Clara like a cold chain. Her body stiffened, her face drained of color. Her heart felt like it cracked, not loudly but deeply. She felt every pair of eyes on her, every whisper, every judgmental look. Some of the Hayes Events staff who recognized her as their true boss looked away in shame, pretending to be busy, unable to intervene without revealing what she had ordered them to hide for years. But she didn't cry, not here, not in front of them. Instead, she took one slow breath, steadying herself, then another. The reflection in her eyes changed. Something in her heart shifted. She stepped back, just slightly, enough to reclaim a small piece of space between herself and the cruelty around her. She straightened her posture, lifting her shoulders and chin. Her hands stopped trembling. She reached up and wiped the tiny tear that had escaped down her cheek. Only one tear, no more. Her voice left her lips in the faintest whisper, meant only for herself. Noted. The single word wasn't bitter. It wasn't weak. It wasn't even angry. It was calm, cold, sharp. It was the voice of someone who finally understood everything. The voice of someone whose heart had stopped begging for love and started preparing for truth. Marissa stopped laughing. Maybe she sensed the shift. Maybe she felt the change in the air. But Clara didn't stay long enough to notice. She turned away from the table and walked toward the hallway with slow, careful steps, as if each step carried the weight of a decision forming in her mind. Behind her, Daniel called to a waiter. Behind her, Ruth complained about the floral arrangement. Behind her, Marissa whispered something into Daniel's ear and forced another smile for the cameras. But Clara didn't listen. Her mind was no longer at the table. Her heart was no longer breaking. It was rebuilding. At the end of the hallway stood a dimly lit door leading backstage. Clara pushed through the ballroom doors and stumbled into a dim hallway, breath shaking, heart pounding, vision blurred. The noise of laughter and music from the party still echoed behind her. But in this hallway, everything went silent. She braced her hand against the wall. One breath, another. Her whole body trembled, not from sadness anymore, but from something colder, heavier. The moment slowed into reflection. She felt hollow as if her heart had been scraped clean. The laughter she'd just heard, the laughter of her husband and the mistress standing proudly beside him, played in her mind like a cruel echo. She had given Daniel 7 years of loyalty, 7 years of soft love and quiet sacrifice, 7 years of stepping aside so he could shine, and he repaid her with humiliation. Her fingers clenched around her phone. She lifted it with a quiet intensity she didn't recognize in herself. She opened her secure corporate app, a hidden world she had never allowed Daniel to see. The home screen appeared, bold, clear, undeniable. Owner, Clara Hayes Company, Hayes Consulting Group. Subsidiaries, Hayes Events Management, host of Thompson Gala. Her throat tightened, not with pain, with truth. The truth that she held power Daniel never respected, power he mocked, power he walked past every day without noticing. Her breath deepened as old memories pulled her backward into her past, a soft, warm flashback. She was 7 again, sitting on her father's lap in their small office. His hands were big and gentle as he taught her how to read financial charts. "Clara," he said softly, "lead with heart, but never let anyone convince you that your mind is small." The scene shifted, her father older, weaker, lying in a hospital bed. She remembered gripping his hand, promising through tears, "I'll protect the company. I'll protect everything you built." Then Daniel's voice cut into the memory, sharp and dismissive from years ago. "You don't need to worry about business things, Clara. Just let me handle the important decisions." That sentence had followed her for years. She believed it. She let him lead. She let him place her in the shadows. But in this quiet hallway, something changed. Her sadness drained, leaving numbness. And numbness slowly sharpened into something else. A rising, focused anger, not explosive, not messy, but strategic. Clara straightened her back. She brushed her hair behind her shoulders with steady fingers. Her breathing leveled. Her heartbeat slowed. For the first time tonight, she looked like the owner she had always been. The owner no one respected because she never asked to be seen. She scrolled through her files. Corporate contracts, ownership papers, financial records, authorization codes. Everything she needed was already in her hands. No permission required, no approval. No support from Daniel or his mother. She didn't need them. She never had. Clara tapped on her contacts and found one name, Jordan Hale, attorney, her personal lawyer in his mid-40s, calm and fiercely loyal. He had handled every major expansion of her company. Months earlier, when her suspicions about Daniel first began, Jordan had gently asked if she wanted him to prepare documents, just in case. She had told him to keep templates ready but to wait for her word. She pressed call. He answered on the first ring. "Clara, what's wrong?" Her voice came out calm, cold, final. "Remember what we discussed," she said. "Use the templates. Prepare the documents. Employment, divorce, I'm done." There was a brief pause on the line. Jordan understood instantly. "I'll finalize everything and send it to your secure folder now," he replied. "And I'll message you the exact wording you can use publicly if you choose to." "Do it," she said. She hung up. Then with that same stillness, she opened her internal company chat and sent a short direct message to Evelyn and Marco. "Backstage office. Now. Bring financial logs, last year's footage, any flagged expenses under Daniel Thompson or Marissa Lane. Treat this as an emergency protocol." They had agreed long ago that if she ever sent a message like that during an event, they would obey without questions. For a moment, she stood there, letting the weight of her decision settle inside her. It didn't break her. It freed her. She looked back toward the ballroom doors, the place where she had been humiliated, erased, replaced. Her eyes hardened, but a quiet fire glowed behind them. She whispered to herself, "This ends tonight." Then she lifted her phone again and tapped open the file labeled Ownership Access, Hayes Events. She will use that access to gather the evidence that destroys them. Clara pushed through a side door behind the ballroom, stepping into a narrow hallway that led to a private backstage office. Her footsteps were sharp, fast, and filled with purpose. The hallway lights flickered slightly, as if reacting to her sudden presence. She moved like a woman who had stopped hoping and started acting. She swung open the office door. Inside, 3 staff members stood up instantly. There was Evelyn, the assistant manager in her 40s with kind eyes, Marco, the security supervisor in his late 30s, and Tara, a young event coordinator who had admired Clara quietly for years. All 3 knew exactly who Clara was, not the humiliated wife, but the real owner of the company running the entire gala. "Mrs. Hayes," Evelyn said, voice steady but respectful. "We saw your message. We've been waiting." The intensity softened into deep reflection as Clara stepped inside. These were the people who had protected her identity for years, people she trusted, people who understood her choice to stay hidden. She remembered the day she told them, "Please don't reveal who I am. I want Daniel to succeed on his own. No favoritism, no special treatment. Unless it threatens the company, you do not interfere." She remembered how Evelyn nodded with quiet understanding, how Marco promised confidentiality, and how Tara said, "You're the most humble boss I've ever met." They never broke that promise. Not even when Daniel began attending events with another woman, not even when rumors floated around, not even when it would have been easy to tell Clara details she tried not to ask for. Because Clara had set the rule, "If it's about my pride, stay silent. If it's about the company, show me everything." Now, though, it threatened both. Clara closed the door behind her. Her voice was calm. "I need everything." Evelyn stepped forward and placed a tablet on the desk. "We've collected the records you asked for. It's all here. I also included the anomalies we flagged months ago when we noticed Mr. Thompson using company-linked accounts." Marco added, "We also secured camera footage from last year's gala and entry logs Daniel signed as an external brand partner for Hayes Events." Tara handed Clara a folder. "And these are printouts of the expenses from the shared corporate event card. The finance team asked if they should escalate. We documented everything, like you instructed, and waited for your signal." Clara forced herself to breathe slowly before she opened the folder. The first page showed a transaction dated 6 months earlier. Hotel reservation, $2,180. Guest, Marissa Lane. Paid with Hayes Events corporate card, authorized by Daniel Thompson, external relations consultant. She turned the page. More hotel stays, dinners, jewelry, then a printed screenshot from the company's internal email thread. Tara pointed at it. "Mr. Thompson sent this to accounting when they questioned one of the hotel charges. They forwarded it to me by mistake." The email read, "My wife is too emotional to attend these things. She's mentally unstable. Just process the charges. I'll handle her." Clara's chest tightened. He used her mental health as an excuse? Called her unstable to hide his cheating? She kept turning pages. A photo taken by a staff member last year, part of the official gallery, showed Daniel and Marissa walking into the gala, holding hands, smiling as if they were the couple being celebrated. On the invitation records Marco had pulled, Marissa was listed simply as his guest, with no mention of his wife. Clara's heart ached, but her face remained still. No tears, no shaking, just clarity. For the first time, she saw the entire truth laid out in front of her, neat and undeniable. She stepped away from the desk and stared at the documents spread open. Her mind drifted into a deep flashback, her wedding day. She saw Daniel's face, young and bright with promise, saw herself in her lace gown, full of hope. He held her hands and whispered, "I will cherish you every day. I will protect your heart." She didn't know then that she'd spend years protecting his ego while he crushed hers. The flashback faded. Her phone buzzed, pulling her back to the present. A text from her lawyer, Jordan. "Everything is ready in your secure folder. Termination notice for his consultant role, divorce documents, suggested wording for a public statement. Are you sure you want to do this tonight?" Clara stared at the screen, her thumb hovering, her breathing steadied, her mind sharpened. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she whispered, I'm sure. She typed back one word, proceed. Evelyn spoke softly. The host, Greg, is waiting for instructions. We told him the owner requested a surprise address. The tech team has your presentation ready to project when you give the signal. Marco nodded. Security is briefed. If you decide to remove Mr. Thompson from any role involving the company, we'll enforce it calmly and legally. We've coordinated with the hotel. Tara added, we can route the mic control through the booth. If he tries to interrupt, he won't be heard. Clara looked at all three of them, her silent allies. Thank you, she said quietly. Stay close. After this, everything changes. And as she spoke, the ballroom microphone crackled faintly through the wall. An announcement was about to begin. A microphone crackled sharply across the ballroom speakers, cutting through the chatter, laughter, and clinking glasses. The sudden noise made dozens of guests turn their heads. The chandeliers dimmed, leaving the room washed in soft golden shadows. A hush stretched over the crowd. At the back of the ballroom, double doors opened. Clara stepped into the darkened corridor leading to the main stage. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Not from fear, not anymore. From certainty. She walked forward, each step controlled and steady, her heels clicking against the polished floor like a metronome counting down to the moment her life and Daniel's would split into before and after. On stage, the gala host, Greg Martin, known for his upbeat personality, lifted the mic with a proud smile. Minutes earlier, he had received a private instruction from Evelyn. The event owner will give a surprise keynote, introduce her as a distinguished figure who prefers privacy. Follow her lead. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg announced, we are honored tonight. Our event has a very special keynote speaker, a distinguished figure who prefers privacy but plays a major role behind the scenes. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A mystery guest? Who could it be? Someone important. Daniel, seated near the front, glanced at the stage with mild confusion. His hand rested on the table near Marissa, the mistress, who was swirling her champagne with a smug smile. Clara stood at the edge of the backstage curtain watching. The intensity of the scene softened into slow, deep reflection, quiet, emotional, rooted in memories. She remembered every moment that led her here, the humiliation, the laughter, the lies, the promises he broke, the promises she kept. She remembered the younger version of herself, the one who believed silence was strength, the one who believed stepping aside was love, the one who thought protecting Daniel's pride was part of being a good wife. Tonight proved her wrong. Silence had only made Daniel bold. Patience had only made him careless. Kindness had only made him cruel. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Greg continued speaking, unaware of the storm gathering behind the curtain. Please give your warmest welcome to the person who made this entire night possible, our event's primary sponsor and strategic partner. He glanced briefly at the screen by the stage where the tech team, following Evelyn's instructions, had loaded the first slide. Special address, Hayes Events Management, owner's remarks. The music swelled, lights shifting dramatically. Clara stepped forward. A spotlight exploded across the stage, blinding for a second, illuminating every tear she once shed and every strength she now carried. The crowd gasped. Daniel's head snapped around so fast his chair nearly tipped. Confusion crashed across his face, then dread. His eyes widened, chest rising and falling quickly. He wasn't expecting her. Not here. Not in this moment. Not stepping into the exact position he planned for someone else. Marissa froze mid-sip, her champagne glass trembling. Her confident posture crumpled into panic. Ruth, sitting beside them, grabbed Daniel's arm. What is she doing here? She hissed. Her voice wasn't soft. Her shock wasn't small. People around the table turned to stare. Clara heard none of it. Her entire focus narrowed into a sharp, calm center as she walked across the stage. The light followed her, turning the room into shadows while she glowed in white radiance. Every step was a declaration. Every breath was a truth rising. Every heartbeat was the finale of the old Clara, in the birth of the woman she always hid. The guests murmured louder now. Is that Daniel's wife? She looks different. I didn't know she was involved in the gala. What's going on? Daniel swallowed hard and stood halfway, uncertain whether to run to her or run from her. But Clara didn't look at him. Not yet. She reached the podium. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She wrapped her fingers around the microphone and lifted it slowly. Behind her, the tech team waited for her signal, fingers hovering over the controls to display the evidence and cut audio if necessary, exactly as Marco and Evelyn had agreed. Her eyes finally moved, directly to Daniel's. His panic sharpened into full fear. Marissa set her champagne down with a soft clink, watching Clara as if a match had been lit in a room full of gasoline. Ruth sank deeper into her chair, knowing something heavy was coming, something she couldn't control with insults or manipulation. Clara leaned forward, the microphone inches from her lips. The entire ballroom held its breath. Even the air went still. The lights above flickered once, like the world bracing itself. Then Clara spoke, low, steady, powerful. "Good evening." A pause. The kind of pause that wasn't empty but loaded, with truth, with justice, with everything she had held back for years. From Daniel's table came a faint whisper. What is she going to do? But Clara didn't answer their fear. She was done answering to any of them. She looked out over the room, then back at Daniel. And the stage lights brightened just a little. The ballroom lights brightened all at once, flooding the stage in a sharp white glow that made Clara appear almost carved from light. Every guest froze. Every whisper died. Every eye locked on her. Daniel stood halfway from his chair, panic shaking through him like electricity. Marissa's hand slipped off his arm. Ruth's face drained of color. Clara lifted the microphone higher, and the room snapped into silence so tight it felt like the walls were holding their breath. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She didn't tremble. Her power came from calm. The intensity softened into a deep, cutting reflection as Clara took a slow breath and began. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Clara Hayes." Gas swept the ballroom like a gust of wind. Some guests recognized the name instantly, from business news, from contract signatures, from quiet boardroom discussions. Others leaned in, confused but curious. Clara continued, her tone steady and surgical. "I am the majority owner of Hayes Consulting Group." Ruth choked on air. Daniel's knees buckled. He gripped the back of his chair as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. Clara went on. "Hayes Consulting owns Hayes Events Management, the company hosting this gala." A collective gasp echoed. Dozens of heads turned toward Daniel, who now looked like a man watching his world crumble in slow motion. Clara paused, letting the truth sink in. She glanced at Daniel, briefly, coldly, then looked back at the crowd. "For years," she said softly, "I allowed others to believe my role was small or non-existent. I preferred to stay quiet. I preferred to watch and support from the background." Her gaze hardened. But silence should not be mistaken for absence, and patience should not be mistaken for weakness. A ripple went through the crowd. Behind her, at her small nod, the tech team triggered the first slide. The screen lit up with a financial report, clear, official, undeniable. "Tonight," she said, "I must address several violations involving company resources. As owner, I have a legal and ethical duty to do so." The first slide appeared in bold letters. Transaction receipts. Corporate card misuse. Daniel Thompson, External Relations Consultant. Another gasp. Some guests covered their mouths. Clara continued, voice slicing like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Daniel Thompson was given a limited consultant role with Hayes Events, mostly symbolic. It was my attempt to support his career, to give him a title he could be proud of." Her eyes flickered to him. He misused that role and company funds for unauthorized expenses, including hotels, gifts, and dinners, all for a woman who is not his wife. The screen shifted. Photos of Daniel and Marissa entering last year's gala. Restaurant receipts, a jewelry purchase, hotel bookings under Marissa's name. Marissa stumbled back, her hand flying to her chest. Daniel grabbed her arm, not out of affection, but desperation. She yanked her arm away. The room turned ice cold. Clara's next words were soft, almost gentle, and therefore even more deadly. "He brought his mistress to this event, twice, Last year and tonight. Ruth collapsed back into her chair, her face red with humiliation. Daniel tried to speak. This is a misunderstanding. But Clara raised her hand. From the back of the room, Marco gave a subtle signal. The audio team cut the live floor microphones for anyone but Clara. Daniel's mouth moved, but no sound came through the speakers. Clara turned slightly to the audience again. In an internal email, when questioned about one of these charges, Daniel described his wife as mentally unstable and too emotional to attend. The email appeared in large text behind her. He used a lie about my mental health, she said, to hide his affair. Whispers exploded now. Oh my God, she owns all of this? He called his wife unstable. He cheated with that woman? Marissa stepped away from Daniel slowly, inch by inch, like she was trying to separate herself from a sinking ship. When Daniel reached for her wrist, she pulled her hand back sharply. I didn't sign up to ruin my career, she whispered, backing away. Ruth stared at her son, her face crumpling, not from love but from embarrassment. Clara nodded to Marco. Security, who had been standing along the walls, moved instantly. 2 guards stepped toward Daniel. Clara continued, due to his actions, I am removing Daniel Thompson from all roles tied to Hayes Consulting Group and its subsidiaries, effective immediately. 1 guard placed a white envelope in Daniel's hand. Inside were termination papers Jordan had finalized minutes earlier. And, Clara added, I am filing for divorce, effective tonight. A second envelope, divorce documents, prepared in advance and activated tonight, was handed to Daniel. The microphone crackled. Daniel took a step toward the stage, trembling. Clara, please, let me explain, he shouted, but the room heard nothing. Only the raw panic in his face showed. Marco moved closer. Sir, step back, he ordered calmly. You have received formal notice. For the remainder of this event, you are no longer acting in any capacity for Hayes events. The room exploded with whispers. She's divorcing him? Right here? In front of everyone? He deserves it. Friends who once praised Daniel stepped away quietly. Some guests took out their phones. Cameras flashed. Reputations shifted in seconds. Clara breathed in slowly, then leaned toward the microphone one last time. Her voice carried through the ballroom like a final sentence. A man who refuses his wife a seat at the table does not deserve to sit at mine. Silence. Stunned. Total. Then, just as Clara turned slightly away from the podium, the stage lights flickered. A quiet warning. The scene erupted with intensity the moment Clara stepped away from the microphone. Guests scattered from Daniel as if he carried a storm around him. Phones flashed in every direction. Security guards closed in tightly, creating a barrier between Daniel and the stage. Clara! Daniel shouted, his voice cracking as he tried to push past Marco, the security supervisor. Clara, please! You can't do this! But Marco held his ground, strong and steady. Sir, step back, he ordered firmly. Per the owner's decision and the contract clauses, you are no longer permitted to act on behalf of the company. The hotel has been notified as well. Please proceed to the exit calmly. The entire ballroom felt electrically charged, buzzing with shock, whispers, and the heavy weight of Daniel's public downfall. The chandelier lights shimmered above like silent witnesses. Clara looked at none of it. She stepped off the stage slowly, gracefully, every movement calm and deliberate. Her heels clicked softly against the stairs, a stark contrast to Daniel's frantic voice behind her. Clara, please, we can talk. I can explain. She kept walking. The intensity softened as she reached the ballroom floor. The crowd parted automatically, creating a clear path for her. No one dared to stand in her way. They saw a woman who had carried herself with dignity through humiliation and now carried victory with the same quiet strength. Clara's face stayed calm, her breathing steady, her posture straight. She wasn't angry. She wasn't bitter. She was free. As she moved across the ballroom, her thoughts slipped into a deep, heartfelt reflection. A soft memory rose in her mind, her father's voice, warm and steady, from a moment long ago. She remembered sitting in the front yard with him on a summer afternoon, her tiny legs tucked under her. She had told him she didn't think she was strong, that she cried too easily, that she cared too much. Her father knelt down beside her, brushing dirt from her hands. A strong woman knows when to stay, he told her gently, but a stronger woman knows when to walk away. The memory washed over her like a blessing. Clara blinked back a single tear, not from pain this time, but from release, from the realization that tonight she had honored the promise she made at his funeral, to protect the company, to protect her dignity, and to protect herself. Behind her, security escorted Daniel toward the back exit. His voice grew smaller, weaker. "Clara, please, you're my wife." But Clara didn't turn, not once. Marissa had already slipped toward a side door, trying to disappear before anyone could connect her face to the photos on the screen. Ruth sat rigid at the table, avoiding eye contact with the guests she had once tried so hard to impress. Clara reached the ballroom doors, and the staff, those who had always known her truth, bowed their heads respectfully as she passed. Evelyn whispered, "We're with you, ma'am." Tara, standing nearby, added softly, "Thank you for showing them who you really are." Marco placed a gentle hand on her shoulder as she walked by. "You did the right thing. We'll handle the rest from here." Clara nodded softly but didn't slow down. The golden lights of the ballroom stretched behind her, making her silhouette glow as she stepped into the quiet hallway. When she reached the main entrance of the building, she paused, only for a moment, only to breathe in the cool night air that met her like a fresh start. She looked up at the bright Gala banner hanging above the doors. Hosted by Hayes Events Management, her company, her legacy, her father's dream. Clara stepped forward, leaving the building with steady, unshaken steps. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Out on the sidewalk, a few late photographers turned, surprised to see her emerge alone. None of them shouted her name yet. Her power wasn't in headlines, not tonight. As she reached the edge of the pavement, she whispered the final truth of the night, soft, powerful, and absolute. "I didn't ruin him. He ruined himself the moment he forgot who I was." Her words drifted into the night, marking the end of one story and the beginning of another. Then the screen faded gently to black. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.